You ever have one of those days where the universe just decides to pull your pants down in the middle of a crowded room and laugh? Yeah, that was my Wednesday. It started like any other day in my profoundly average, middle-class existence. I woke up, found that Brenda had stolen the blanket in the middle of the night, again, and shuffled half asleep to the bathroom, stepping directly onto what I hoped was just an old cotton ball. A strong start. Brenda was already up. She always got up early these days, though she never used to. I assumed it was some self-improvement kick, one of those wake up at 5 a.m. and drink a green sludge that tastes like regret kind of deals. Whatever made her happy. But as I walked into the kitchen, I noticed something. She was sitting at the table, fully dressed like she was about to give a TED talk, but doing nothing. Just sitting there, looking at a blank piece of paper like it had personally insulted her family. Now, I'm a man of patience. I could have just let it go. But when your wife of 7 years is staring at an empty sheet of paper like it's got the secret to immortality written in invisible ink, you get curious. Thinking about finally writing that novel? I asked, pouring myself a cup of coffee. She flinched. Actually flinched. Like I just snuck up behind her and screamed "B-O-O" in her ear. That was new. No, just jotting down things I need to do, she said, flashing me a smile so forced it could have been part of a hostage video. Again, I could have let it go. But I didn't. Things like? Her eyes darted to the paper and back to me. You know. Errands. Boring stuff. Right. Because the average grocery list required the level of concentration usually reserved for NASA engineers launching a rocket. I leaned over her shoulder. The paper was blank. And right there, right at that exact moment, something in my brain went, huh. Not a full-blown alarm, not yet. More like a single, skeptical eyebrow raised by the detective inside me that I didn't know existed. I let it go. For then. Fast forward to later that evening. I was in the garage, trying to convince my old tool chest that it wasn't actually a lost artifact from a forgotten civilization when I saw Brenda dart past the open garage door. I mean dart. Like Olympic-level sprinting, except instead of going for gold, she was going for the backyard, our backyard, which has absolutely nothing in it except a rusting lawn chair and a grill that I keep telling myself I'll clean next weekend. So, naturally, I followed her. Now, before I tell you what I saw, let me set the scene here. The sun was setting, casting that perfect warm glow that makes everything look nicer than it actually is. The air was crisp, the kind that makes you think of bonfires and football games. And there was my wife, standing in the middle of the yard, digging a hole. With a spoon. I stood there for a solid 10 seconds, waiting for my brain to process what my eyes were witnessing. Then, because I am, at my core, a fool, I asked. Hey, Brenda? You okay there? Brenda, bless her heart, jumped about a foot in the air before spinning around, cradling what looked like a small box in her hands. A box. A box she was about to bury. Oh. Stephen. Didn't see you there, she said, because apparently, she thought she was a raccoon caught rummaging through the trash and not, a grown woman about to stage a backyard burial. I stared at her. She stared at me. The wind rustled through the trees, adding dramatic tension to a situation that absolutely should not have needed it. What's in the box? I asked, because of course I asked. She clutched it tighter. Nothing. Just throwing something out. Yes. The famous dig a hole in the backyard with a spoon and throw something out method. Very common. Very normal. She laughed. Too loud. Too high-pitched. It's not a big deal, Stephen. I crossed my arms. So, if I take a look inside? No. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was when my internal eyebrow-raising detective turned into full-fledged Sherlock Holmes. I took a step forward. She took a step back. I took another step. She held the box behind her back like she was protecting the nuclear codes. We could have kept up this ridiculous dance for hours if she hadn't miscalculated her footing. One misstep, one wobble, and suddenly the box wasn't in her hands anymore, it was on the ground, the lid popping open like a scene from an overdramatic soap opera. And there, nestled inside like some twisted little treasure, was a set of men's cufflinks. Not mine. I should clarify here, I do not own any cufflinks. I am not a cufflink kind of guy. If you ever see me wearing anything more formal than business casual disaster, assume I've been replaced by an alien. Brenda stared at the cufflinks. Then at me. Then back at the cufflinks. I bent down, picked them up, and turned them over. Engraved initials. Not mine. It hit me like a freight train. Not in the dramatic I clutched my chest and fell to my knees kind of way, but in the oh, you absolute fool kind of way. Well, I said, turning them over in my palm. Unless I've been sleep buying fancy accessories in my spare time, I'm guessing these don't belong to me? Brenda opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. I waited. And then she said the single foolish thing I have ever heard come out of another human being's mouth. They're, vintage? I blinked. Vintage. Yeah. You know. Like, family heirlooms. I found them. I thought they might be worth something, so I was, checking. By burying them. Silence. And then I started laughing. Not the this is funny kind of laugh. No, this was the kind of laughter you let out when your entire reality has just folded in on itself and the only logical reaction left is to lose your mind a little bit. Brenda watched me, shifting uncomfortably. Stephen, I held up a hand. No. No, please. By all means. Keep going. I love a good story. And for the first time in our marriage, Brenda had nothing to say. I had all the answers I needed. And somehow, I just knew this was going to get even more stupid. Brenda stood there like a malfunctioning robot, mouth opening and closing, eyes darting around like she was searching for a cheat sheet to get herself out of this one. I was tempted to grab a pen and offer to take notes on whatever nonsense she was about to spit out next. I held up the cufflinks, twirling them in my fingers. So, just so we're clear, you, my wife, were about to bury a pair of men's cufflinks in our backyard, with a spoon? She swallowed. I wasn't burying them, Stephen. I was just conducting an archaeological dig? I interrupted. Hoping to discover the lost civilization of bad excuses? Her face twitched. I didn't want you to get the wrong idea. I nodded. Oh, absolutely. Because if you hadn't been out here, crouched over a hole like some kind of amateur gravedigger, I would have immediately assumed something fishy was going on. But now everything makes total sense. Her lips pressed together. You don't have to be so dramatic. I let out a sharp breath through my nose. Brenda, I don't think I'm the one who was having a breakdown in the backyard with stolen accessories. She bristled. They aren't stolen. Oh, no? So then, you'd have no problem telling me whose they are? A pause. Not even a long one, but long enough for me to file it under very suspicious behavior. Brenda let out a quick, nervous chuckle. God, Stephen, I don't even remember where I got them. Oh, sure, because everybody has an uncontrollable habit of collecting random men's cufflinks and hiding them like Easter eggs. Her jaw clenched. I could tell she was scrambling for an exit strategy, and it was almost painful to watch. Then, in a moment of absolute brilliance, she went for the Hail Mary of terrible explanations. They're your cufflinks, she blurted. I stared at her. Then I looked down at the initials on the back of the cufflinks. Then I looked back at her. You're telling me, I said slowly, that my own cufflinks have the initials AL on them? Brenda blinked. Maybe you got them as a gift? Right. And I just forgot about them? Completely blanked on the time I received a set of fancy cufflinks from some mysterious AL? It's possible? I closed my eyes for a moment. I needed a second. Just one tiny second to let my brain process the absolute masterpiece of stupidity that was unfolding before me. "Brenda," I said, pinching the bridge of my nose, "if you're going to lie to me, could you at least put some effort into it? Like, try to respect my intelligence a little bit?" She huffed, crossing her arms. "Fine. You clearly don't believe me, so what's the point?" I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, the universe decided to drop-kick me in the stomach. Because at that exact moment, my neighbor, Kevin, appeared at the fence. Now, let me tell you something about Kevin. Kevin is always around when you don't want him to be. If you so much as step outside for half a second, he materializes like some kind of suburban cryptid, ready to offer unsolicited advice about lawn care or his latest theory on why the mailman looks suspicious. "Hey, Steve-o," Kevin called, grinning. Didn't mean to interrupt, but... Then his eyes landed on Brenda. On the half-dug hole. On the cufflinks in my hand. "Oh ho!" His grin widened. "What's this? Some kind of treasure hunt? Are we burying secrets today?" Brenda stiffened like she was about to drop dead on the spot. I, on the other hand, had already reached the "I have nothing left to lose" stage of my sanity. "Funny you should say that, Kev," I said, holding up the cufflinks. "Apparently, these belong to me, despite having some other guy's initials on them. Any thoughts?" Kevin's face did something truly beautiful. His grin twitched, his eyebrows shot up, and for one glorious moment, he knew. Then, like the world's worst poker player, he covered his mouth with his hand and turned away. "Oh, man," he muttered. "Oh, man. Now, I'm not a fool." If Kevin, a man whose idea of a good time is recording footage of suspicious-looking squirrels, was reacting like that, it meant only one thing. "Kevin," I said, tilting my head. "You want to tell me something?" "Nope," Kevin said immediately, already taking a step back toward his house. "Absolutely not. I'm staying so far out of this, you have no idea. My lips are sealed, my dude. You didn't hear anything from me." I stared at him. "You know whose initials those are, don't you?" Kevin held up both hands in surrender. Hey, I'm not saying anything, alright? I don't get involved in other people's business. It's just," he hesitated. "Look, man. I just hope you weren't planning to vote for Anderson this year, because, yeah." My brain short-circuited. Anderson. As in, Councilman Anthony L. Anderson. As in, the guy whose face was currently plastered on every single election poster in our neighborhood. The guy whose obnoxious commercials Brenda never skipped. The guy who, now that I really thought about it, had been at our last neighborhood barbecue and had spent a truly unsettling amount of time laughing at Brenda's jokes. "Oh, come on." Brenda took a tiny, imperceptible step backward. I turned my head slowly to look at her. She swallowed. "Okay," I said, my voice eerily calm. "So, let's review. You were about to bury a pair of this guy's cufflinks in our backyard with a spoon, and I'm supposed to believe that means nothing?" Brenda licked her lips. Actually, you know what? Don't answer that." I held up a hand. "Because I already know what's happening here. The real question is," I turned back to Kevin. "How long have you known?" Kevin grimaced. Define known?" I gave him a look. He let out a slow, defeated breath. "Couple months?" "A couple months." I exhaled, turning back to Brenda. "And now you're trying to dispose of the evidence? This was your master plan?" Brenda, in what could only be described as an Olympic-level attempt to salvage the situation, squared her shoulders. I was panicking. "And this was the best you could come up with? I didn't think you'd notice." My mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. And then, I just started laughing. Not normal laughter. No, this was the "I have fully lost my mind and reality is a joke" kind of laughter. Brenda, as expected, did not appreciate this reaction. "Stephen, this isn't funny." Oh, I beg to differ. I gasped between wheezes. Because, really, what else was there to do? Everything had already reached peak stupidity. And I had a feeling it was only going to get more stupid from here. Brenda stood there, arms crossed, her face twisted into some sort of defensive scowl, like I was the unreasonable one for questioning why she was about to conduct a backyard burial for a politician's cufflinks. Meanwhile, Kevin had the decency to at least look guilty, though that didn't stop him from inching toward his back door like he had somewhere better to be. I rubbed my temples. All right, Brenda. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to explain to me, in clear, coherent English, why you were about to dig a hole for these with a spoon, and if your answer contains any variation of "it's not what it looks like," I swear, I'm going to. I don't even know. But it won't be pleasant. Her fingers tightened around her elbows. You're making this into something it's not. I gestured dramatically toward the cufflinks. Brenda, this is something. People misplace things, Stephen. On purpose? In a hole? Maybe I panicked. Maybe? I repeated, eyebrows hitting my hairline. So you're not even sure why you were doing it? You were just out here, digging like a guilty squirrel, and suddenly realized, oh wow, what am I doing? This is crazy. Her jaw clenched. I turned to Kevin. I need to hear it. Say it out loud for me. He exhaled sharply. Man, you know what's happening here. I stared at him, letting the silence stretch. He groaned, scratching his head. Fine. Fine. Brenda's been seeing Councilman Anderson. Everyone kinda knows. I blinked. Everyone? Well, not everyone, he amended, shifting uncomfortably. I mean, obviously you didn't. But, yeah. It's not exactly a state secret. I turned back to Brenda. So, just to recap. The entire neighborhood has apparently been aware that my wife is involved with a local politician, but somehow, the person she's married to, was not included in this fun little piece of information? Brenda rolled her eyes. Oh, don't be so dramatic. I let out a sharp laugh. Brenda, I just found you burying evidence. If anyone is being dramatic, I think it's the person who chose to solve their problems with manual labor in the middle of the night. It's not the middle of the night, she snapped. Wow, thank you for that correction, I said, my voice drenched in sarcasm. That really changes the entire situation. I take back everything. Kevin, ever the social coward, made another attempt to back away. All right, you guys seem to have this covered, so I'm just gonna. Kevin, I swear to everything, if you run off now. He groaned. What do you want from me, man? I just mow my lawn and mind my business. I pointed at him. You do not mind your business, and we both know it. Yeah, well, I tried to mind my business, but Brenda was real casual about it. He threw up his hands. She was out here bragging about her connections and her newfound power, and I figured, hey, if she's that confident, it's not my job to interfere. I turned to Brenda, deadpan. You were bragging? She groaned, like this was an unfair attack on her. I was just talking. Talking about what, exactly? Why does it even matter, she snapped. Because I am your husband. I shouted. Because I just watched you almost perform a backyard evidence disposal. Because I am so completely done with whatever nonsense you're trying to pull right now. Brenda exhaled sharply. Fine. You wanna know? Yes, I was seeing Anderson. Yes, it was serious. No, I wasn't trying to hide it. And no, I don't feel bad. I stared at her. Kevin stared at her. The whole neighborhood probably stared at her, considering she had just confessed at full volume in a place where sound traveled exceptionally well. She crossed her arms again. What? I was going to tell you eventually. I let out an empty, humorless laugh. Oh, eventually? When? After I found his monogrammed bathrobe in the laundry? Brenda huffed, like I was the exhausting one here. You always exaggerate everything. Brenda, I literally just caught you digging a hole to bury his stuff. Please, explain to me how I'm the one making a big deal out of this. You are, she insisted. People have affairs, Stephen. It's normal. You should be glad I even stayed this long. Kevin let out a slow, low whistle. Wow. Brenda shot him a glare. Do you mind? Not at all, he said, shaking his head. This is fascinating. I pressed my fingers to my temples. Brenda, for the sake of my own sanity, let me just get this straight. You think I should be grateful that you've been cheating on me? That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said. Brenda groaned. Oh my God, Stephen. What do you want from me? I threw up my hands. I want you to show some level of awareness that this is insane. She scoffed. Oh, please. It's not like you've been the perfect husband. I blinked. Excuse me? You never listen, she complained, like I was the one who had completely derailed our marriage. You act like I'm just some side character in your life. I let out a breath so sharp it could have cut through steel. I act like you're the side character? Yes, she said, as if this was obvious. I gestured wildly to the hole she had been digging. Brenda. I just caught you trying to bury another man's belongings. Please, tell me how I'm the one who doesn't respect you. You're not listening, she said again, throwing her hands up. This is exactly what I mean. Kevin leaned over, muttering, she did have a shovel in the garage. The spoon thing was just for show. I shot him a look. You are not helping. He held up his hands. Hey, man, I'm just pointing out the facts. Brenda groaned, turning away. I don't need to explain myself to either of you. I inhaled sharply. Brenda. Please. Before I completely lose my mind, I need you to answer one thing for me. She sighed. What? I held up the cufflinks again. Why in the name of all things logical, were you trying to hide these? If you were so convinced you did nothing wrong, why was your first instinct to dig a hole and throw them in it? Brenda hesitated. And then she said, in the absolute foolest voice imaginable. Because it looks bad. Kevin made a choking sound. I took a slow, deep breath, processing the absolute masterpiece of stupidity that had just left her mouth. Then I turned to Kevin. Do you want to say something? Kevin shook his head, barely holding in laughter. Nope. Nope, I think we're all good here. I exhaled again. Because, really, what else was there to say? Brenda was still standing there, arms crossed, chin tilted up like she was the one who had caught me doing something shady. Kevin had retreated halfway to his porch, but he was still watching, because, let's be real, this was probably the most interesting thing that had ever happened on our street. The man had nothing better to do. I, meanwhile, was experiencing a deep, soul-crushing exhaustion. All right, I said, taking a slow breath, we've established that you were seeing Anderson. We've established that everyone but me knew about it. We've established that you attempted, and failed, to dispose of evidence in the most suspicious way imaginable. I paused, rubbing my temples. Now, let's talk about why you suddenly decided to get rid of his cufflinks today. What changed? Brenda pursed her lips, as if this was my fault for asking too many questions. I gestured toward the house. Because I've got to tell you, if you just left them sitting in a drawer somewhere, I never would have noticed. But no. You decided to bury them, which shockingly made me pay attention. She huffed. I wasn't thinking. Clearly. Kevin snorted. Brenda shot him a glare. Do you mind? Kevin shrugged. Not really. I turned back to Brenda. So? Tell me. What changed? She inhaled through her nose, her expression tight. We broke up. I blinked. You broke up with him? Yes, she said, annoyed. Obviously. I let out a sharp laugh. Oh, obviously. Right. Obviously, you ended things with the married politician who's been using you as a side project. Brenda's mouth twitched. It was mutual. Kevin made a noise that could only be described as a pft. Brenda ignored him. I leaned back slightly, crossing my arms. Mutual? Aha. So, tell me, what was the mutual reason for this breakup? Did you both suddenly decide you needed to focus on your personal growth? Brenda's fingers twitched. And then she did it. She played the most predictable, pathetic card in the history of bad decisions. It just wasn't working out, she said. I exhaled. Brenda. She shrugged. It wasn't. Brenda. She rolled her eyes. Fine. If you must know, he got caught. I blinked. Caught? She hesitated. His wife found out. A slow, incredulous smile spread across my face. And let me guess. She didn't take it well? Brenda scowled. You don't have to be smug about it. Kevin laughed so hard he had to hold onto the railing of his porch. I ignored him, tilting my head. So? What did she do? Kick him out? Take half his money? Plaster his name all over town with cheater written underneath? Brenda shifted uncomfortably. She's divorcing him. Good for her, Kevin muttered. Brenda shot him another glare. I rubbed my chin. And let me guess. Once she found out, Anderson suddenly realized he loved his wife, and you were demoted to mistake status? Brenda exhaled loudly. I told you, it was mutual. Oh, for sure, I said. Totally mutual. Nothing like getting dumped with consequences to make a guy rethink his extracurricular activities. Brenda's jaw clenched. I didn't get dumped. Sure, I said, nodding. You mutually got left with a wife he swore he didn't love anymore. That's so different. She let out a sharp breath, muttering something under her breath. Kevin leaned forward. What was that? Nothing, she snapped. Kevin wiggled his eyebrows at me. She definitely said something. I turned back to Brenda. Oh no, please. Don't stop now. This is fascinating. She hesitated. Then, with visible reluctance, she mumbled, I thought he was leaving her for me. And there it was. I let out a low whistle. Oh wow. You actually thought he was gonna do it? She crossed her arms again. He said he would. Kevin let out another pft. Oh man, this just keeps getting better. Brenda shot him a look so venomous I thought he might burst into flames. I exhaled, shaking my head. So, let's summarize. You blew up our marriage for a guy who immediately threw you under the bus the second he got caught. Brenda's eye twitched. It's not that simple. Oh no, it is that simple, I said. You thought you were getting a promotion, and instead, you got laid off. Kevin actually clapped at that one. Brenda looked murderous. Are you enjoying this? I considered it. Honestly? A little bit. She groaned, pressing her fingers to her temples. God, you are so childish. I blinked. I'm sorry, I'm childish? I pointed at the hole she had just been digging. I'm not the one who tried to literally bury my bad decisions. Brenda made a noise that sounded a lot like a low, frustrated growl. You know what? Fine. Yes, I screwed up. Yes, I miscalculated. But you know what, Stephen? You are not perfect either. I tilted my head. Oh boy. Here we go. You never appreciated me, she accused. I blinked. Appreciated you? Brenda, I was literally married to you. You took me for granted. I took you for granted? I pointed at the cufflinks. Brenda, you spent months sneaking around with a guy who was using you like a rental car. Her face twitched. That's not. It is, I interrupted. And you know it. Brenda pressed her lips together, eyes flicking toward Kevin, who was watching this like it was the greatest show he'd ever seen. All right, she said, exhaling. Fine. You want honesty? Here it is. I made a mistake. I put a hand to my chest, feigning shock. Oh wow. A mistake? Just one? She groaned. Stephen, just. No, please, I said, gesturing. Tell me more about how your one little mistake involved months of lying, sneaking around, and full-on publicly humiliating me. Brenda's jaw clenched again. Kevin let out a low whistle. You know, I was gonna go inside, but now I need to see how this plays out. Brenda ignored him. She took a breath, straightened her posture, and looked at me with something resembling actual regret. Look, she said. I get it, okay? You're mad. You should be mad. But I don't want this to get ugly. I stared at her. Then I laughed. A deep, genuine laugh that felt amazing. Oh, Brenda, I said, shaking my head. It got ugly the second you picked up that spoon. And for the first time that night. She had nothing to say. Brenda was still standing there, arms crossed, looking at me like I was the problem in this situation. Kevin, our ever-present audience, had pulled out his phone not to record, at least I hoped not, but more likely to text his wife and let her know that whatever was happening in the Stevens backyard was too good to miss. I, on the other hand, had reached a level of mental exhaustion I didn't even know existed. Not the tired you get after a long day kind. No, this was the kind of exhaustion where your brain just throws its hands up and says, you know what? Whatever happens, happens. So, I said, rubbing my face. Let's just get this straight one more time for fun. You had an affair with a politician who, shockingly, was not the man of integrity he pretended to be. He got caught. His wife kicked him out. He immediately bailed on you. And now, because you were hoping for a promotion to the title of Wife 2.0, you're mad because he reconciled with his actual wife. Brenda sighed. I already said I made a mistake. Oh, did you? I asked. Because I'm not sure whoops, my secret relationship with a married man exploded in my face really falls under mistake territory. Brenda rolled her eyes. What do you want from me, Stephen? I stared at her, then gestured broadly. Brenda, at this point, I don't even know what I want. Do I want an apology? Probably. Do I think I'll get one that doesn't sound like a forced press release? Absolutely not. Do I want to go back in time and somehow not marry the woman who just spent 20 minutes trying to convince me that burying cufflinks was a rational decision? Yes. More than anything. She scoffed. You're being dramatic. Kevin muttered, man, if I had $1 for every time she said that. Brenda whipped her head toward him. Why are you still here? Kevin shrugged. This is the most entertaining thing I've seen all year. Not leaving now. I turned back to Brenda. So, since your grand escape plan involved manual labor with a spoon, what was supposed to happen next? You bury the evidence and then what? Life goes on? She exhaled through her nose. I was just trying to move on, Stephen. By burying something in our yard. Yes. I nodded slowly. Brenda, you know normal people just throw things away, right? Like in a trash can? She huffed. I couldn't throw them away. What if someone found them? I blinked. What? Brenda, the garbage truck doesn't inspect every piece of trash for cheating evidence. You never know, she snapped. Kevin nodded. I mean, she does have a point. The garbage man could be part of a secret neighborhood detective agency, waiting for people to throw out suspicious objects. Brenda groaned. Oh, shut up, Kevin. I ignored them both. So, what now? I asked. Brenda frowned. What do you mean? I gestured between us. What? Now. You were clearly hoping your relationship with Anderson would go somewhere, and since that, backfired spectacularly, I assume there was no backup plan? She lifted her chin. I'll figure something out. I exhaled. Right. Of course. Because planning ahead has really been your strong suit so far. Brenda clenched her fists. You act like I'm ruined or something. I will be fine, Stephen. Unlike you, I know how to land on my feet. Kevin let out a slow whistle. Oof. Bold move, insulting the guy you're currently married to while standing in his backyard. I smiled. Yeah, Brenda. Very smart of you. Are you forgetting that I own this house? That you are currently standing in my yard, arguing with me after getting dumped by a guy who probably doesn't even remember your middle name? Her face twitched. That's. And now that I think about it, I continued, are you still living here? She hesitated. Because now she realized what she should have been worried about. Kevin grinned. Oh man. I love this part. I crossed my arms, staring Brenda down. Where exactly were you planning to sleep tonight? She shifted uncomfortably. In our bed? I let out a sharp laugh. Oh, absolutely not. She narrowed her eyes. Stephen, you can't just kick me out. I raised an eyebrow. Can't I? She set her jaw. Legally, I have rights. I smirked. Legally, I have a lawyer. Kevin gasped. Oh. That was good. Brenda's hands balled into fists. You are being so immature. I threw my hands up. Brenda, I'm literally asking a simple question. Where are you going to sleep? She huffed. I don't know, Stephen. God, why do you care? Why do I care? I repeated, incredulous. Brenda, I have been publicly humiliated by your choices, and now that your backup plan has imploded, I absolutely care about whether or not you think you can just waltz back into my house like nothing happened. She exhaled sharply. I just need time. Oh, you had time, I cut in. Months, in fact. Time to tell me the truth. Time to stop making me look like a fool in front of my entire neighborhood. She rolled her eyes. Oh my God, Stephen, grow up. Kevin shook his head. Brenda, you have zero shame. She ignored him. So what now, Stephen? You gonna throw me out right now? I shrugged. Depends. Do you have somewhere else to go? Silence. I tilted my head. Did Anderson at least pay for anything while he was stringing you along, or was this volunteer work? Kevin wheezed. Oh my God. Brenda's nostrils flared. You are being horrible. I smiled. You started it. Her hands clenched and unclenched, but she didn't have a single comeback left. She knew it. Kevin knew it. I knew it. And for the first time since this whole thing started. She looked nervous. Good. Because Brenda did have rights. And she was correct that I couldn't just throw her out on the street this second. But what I could do? Make very sure she understood that she wasn't staying here. I pulled out my phone and scrolled. What are you doing? She snapped. I smirked. Calling my lawyer. Kevin fist pumped. Oh, this just got real. Brenda swallowed. Stephen, let's just talk. I held up a finger. Oh, no. You had plenty of time to talk. I was the one kept in the dark, remember? I tapped my phone screen. But don't worry. I'll figure everything out right now. And the second I hit dial, Brenda finally realized she had lost. Brenda stood there, her face switching between anger and panic as my phone rang. She wasn't stupid, she knew that once lawyers got involved, things would move fast, and not in a way that benefited her. Kevin, still the world's most invested spectator, had moved to my porch steps, looking way too comfortable for someone who had nothing to do with this situation. Brenda exhaled sharply. Stephen. Stop. I smiled. Why? Because this is ridiculous, she snapped. You're seriously calling a lawyer over this? I tilted my head. Brenda, what did you think was going to happen? That I'd just shrug it off? That we'd have some heartfelt conversation and you'd move back in like this was a rough patch? She folded her arms, her nails digging into her skin. I just need time to figure things out. I let out a sharp laugh. Oh, you need time. That's hilarious, considering I didn't even get 5 seconds of warning before you blew up our marriage. The call connected. My lawyer's assistant answered. I kept my eyes locked on Brenda as I spoke. Hey, it's Stephen. Yeah, I need to move forward with the divorce. No delay. I want her out as soon as legally possible. Brenda's face twisted. You don't have to do this. Kevin leaned forward. Oh, but he does. I ignored them both and finished the call. When I hung up, Brenda looked at me like I'd personally betrayed her, which, frankly, was insane. You really think you're gonna come out of this clean, she sneered. People are gonna talk, Stephen. I gestured broadly. Brenda, people have already been talking. The only person who wasn't in on the joke was me. Her jaw clenched. Fine. But don't think this is over. I smirked. Oh, it definitely is. She stormed past me, marching into the house like she still had some claim over it. I turned to Kevin. You see that? I asked. She still thinks she's in control. Kevin nodded. Oh yeah. That's delusion. I sighed, shoving my hands into my pockets. Well, this is gonna be a nightmare. Kevin patted my shoulder. Yeah, but at least it'll be her problem soon. And for the first time in months, I actually felt free. Thanks for watching. Please hit the like button and rate the story in the comments.